Happy New Year, everyone. Thank God 2021 is over, as if that makes any difference. But it was a long year and it was looking pretty bad for movies for a while, but we ended up getting some great ones by the end of it. I'll link my Letterboxd ranking for the entire year in the description, as well as some of my longer reviews for these films. But I'm really excited to talk about my favorite of the bunch. My top 10 got a little refresh this weekend as I reflected on the year. I was able to see 73 new releases, but there were a few I didn't get to that could have been on this list, particularly Drive My Car, Flee, Quo Vadis Ida, Parallel Mothers, and a few others. So hopefully I'll get around to those soon, but make sure to let me know your favorite films of 2021, and let's get into it. I'm gonna start with some quick one-sentence honorable mentions. These are films that I think are really great but didn't make my top 10, and I definitely don't want them to go unnoticed. The first being Shiva Baby. Think Uncut Gems levels of stressed, but Danielle is at a Shiva, and when her grandparents aren't asking her what she's doing with her life, her sugar daddy is showing up with his wife and his newborn baby. It should be categorized as horror. Summit of the Gods is a French animated, really gut-wrenching climbing drama that explores obsessive behavior through a journalist and his muse, this man who, for whatever reason, has always attempted the impossible, which has led him to, of course, Mount Everest. It has some of the most gorgeous animation of the year and sound design that I seriously hope wins it an Oscar. In the Heights, I liked better than West Side Story, and I feel like a lot of people skipped out on it when it first came out, but it's a really solid musical that touches on important themes, has great performances, and some hard-hitting emotional moments. There are so many more that I could shout out, but I'll finish with 9 Days. This was Edson Oda's directorial debut, which is shocking. It takes place in this sort of purgatory where these unborn souls are being interviewed for whether they're fit to get a chance at life. The themes aren't particularly novel and it can be a little overly sentimental, but it's a really unique and profound way of exploring trauma and the value of life with excellent performances from Winston Duke and Zazie Beetz. As for my official top 10 list, please remember, this is my personal ranking. I'm not saying these films are all 5-star films, just my personal favorites, the ones that sparked joy for me. They may not be the same ones as yours. Anyways, filling my number 10 slot is Old.
We really don't know what happened.
Well, I think this man had something to do with it.
Man, if I was involved, why would I be standing around, bro? Damn.
I didn't have this film in my top 10 until I really started to think about the year and what my favorite releases were, what I thought was the most interesting. And I'm a huge M. Night Shyamalan fan. I think he's such a fascinating director, even when his movies aren't great. He's just so unabashedly campy and unique, and this is such a crazy movie that any other director probably would have thought was too dumb to make. It's a body horror about a beach that makes you old. But he pulled out his B-movie writing that I loved so much in The Happening. I feel like a lot of people are interpreting it as him just being a bad writer when it was intentionally very silly and campy. There's literally a character named Mid-Sized Sedan, guys. He was not taking himself seriously. But even beyond that, it's shot incredibly beautifully. He experimented with a lot of interesting camera movements and blocking, and it's just a really fitting addition to his filmography. And again, what I always say about M. Night Shyamalan is that even when his stuff doesn't work, he's at least swinging for the fences. He's funding his own projects, not letting them be compromised by big studio interference, and I'm just always excited to see what comes out of his weird little head.
Another pig can't do what she did.
I don't know, man. Get a good trainer or something.
He lives a season while I train a pig that'll never be as good.
Coming in at number 9 is Pig. This is another one that I didn't think would make my top 10, but it's really stuck with me since July. I tried to rid myself of recency bias with some of these more Oscar-fitting films. But like 9 Days, this is a really impressive directorial debut from Michael Sarnowski that was easy to pass on when it came out because it almost looks silly, but it's a really compelling drama about passion and loss by way of cooking and a truffle pig. Nicolas Cage plays this world-renowned chef who's gone off the grid, but when his truffle pig gets stolen, he goes on this John Wick-style mission, with significantly less action, to get her back, and has to face a lot of demons along the way. I highly recommend checking this one out if you haven't. It's also just a beautiful film. It has a really excellent supporting performance from Alex Wolff, and Nicolas Cage reminds us that he's still one of the greats and can pull something like this out of his back pocket like it's nothing. At number 8, we have Malignant. This film came out back in September, but is another one that has stuck with me as one of the most wholly original and just bonkers movies of 2021. James Wan, the genius director behind Saw, the Insidious and Conjuring franchises, Aquaman, somehow convinced Warner Brothers to let him make this movie. And it starts out as what seems like a run-of-the-mill corny horror flick, but once you find out what's really going on, your jaw will drop. Few films have surprised me in the way that this film did, and it absolutely has some flaws, and I'm not much of a horror buff, but this is a really, really interesting entry into the genre, especially as a major studio release. And I say this completely unironically, one of the best superhero movies of the year.
Give me the goddamn kitty cat bracelet, motherfucker!
Coming in at number 7 is Nobody. I love this film. I could not believe how well Bob Odenkirk suited this role of the seemingly normal suburban dad who turns out to be a John Wick level badass. But his dedication to the physicality and essence of the character really paid off. It's a pretty standard revenge flick, but I thought the dialogue, the editing, the plot beats were all really refreshing for a genre where it's getting to be increasingly difficult to do that. Ilya Naishuller is someone to keep an eye on. We got a lot of really great films last year from directors who are really early in their careers. The action sequences are insanely well shot and choreographed. I'll never forget the bus scene in this film. It's one of those movies that makes me sad. There are no stunt and choreography Oscars, and it's also got extremely charming supporting performances from the legend Christopher Lloyd himself and RZA to boot. Overall, just a solid action film, and I'm very excited for a potential sequel.
All the explanation you need.
My number 6 spot goes to none other than The Matrix Resurrections. I said in my No Way Home video that that was the most divisive film of the year, but this one was arguably more polarizing. As a late addition to the Matrix franchise, I do think that it struggles a bit to justify its own existence, but I think it ended up being a really interesting entry into the current blockbuster landscape that is visually and thematically more interesting than 90% of what we get nowadays. It is truly meta in a way that we haven't seen before, because Lana Wachowski, the writer and director, was not only acknowledging its existence as a blockbuster, but reflecting on the franchise itself and her experience with it. There are a lot of really interesting details about this film that are easy to miss, but have made me appreciate it more and more as I've done research into it and seen other people talking about it. I also think The Matrix is an important franchise as a whole, just as a completely unique sci-fi concept and a world created by two trans people that's an allegory for being trans and is so unapologetically queer and challenging and different. This film definitely shouldn't have been dismissed as quickly as it was, or compared to something like Free Guy. Not as a diss to Free Guy, but they're just extremely different in what they're actually trying to say. And I will gladly take more Matrix content in my lifetime / when I'm old enough to appreciate them. So yes, The Matrix Resurrections was one of my favorite films of 2021. At number 5, we have The Worst Person in the World. This is a Norwegian film that has not been released in the US yet, but it was directed by Joachim Trier and tells the story of Julie, a young woman who's really lost in life. She's constantly changing her academic and career path. She doesn't know what she's really passionate about and feels restless in her own life. As she approaches 30, she has a lot of come to Jesus moments and really has to look in the mirror in a way that we all have to at some point or another. Another one that's not always completely novel, but Joachim Trier took these themes and presented them in a really refreshing way with some really interesting filmmaking. The two scenes that probably stand out the most are the scene in the poster and the scene where they take shrooms. But it's just a really cathartic film with, for me, some of the most emotionally impactful moments of the year.
Markus. Nein, Markus.
At number 4 is Riders of Justice. I love Danish films, guys. I don't know what it is, but Another Round is one of my favorite films of all time. Thomas Vinterberg is a mastermind. He's also done The Hunt with Mads Mikkelsen, which is a great film. But Riders of Justice was directed by Anders Thomas Jensen and stars Mads Mikkelsen as a very emotionally suppressed military man who has to take care of his daughter after his wife dies in a tragic train crash. When he finds out the crash might not have been an accident, we get this ragtag team of men who have connections to the accident, trying to take revenge on the gang members responsible. It subverts a lot of revenge tropes and touches on trauma and masculinity and grief, all while being oddly really funny. It also has this really interesting underlying theme of coincidence and probability and accepting what we can and cannot control. Just an excellent film. I think it flew under the radar for the most part this year, but I highly recommend seeking it out.
My planet Arrakis is so beautiful when the sun is low. Rolling over the sands, you can see spice in the air.
My number 3 film of the year is Dune. Another one that I was very excited for. I did a big long video for it that I'll link. But Denis Villeneuve is one of the greatest directors working today, especially in the sci-fi genre, and he's wanted to adapt this since he was 14 years old. And he stayed incredibly faithful to the source material with a really great understanding of the themes, an incredible cast, an insane score from Hans Zimmer, and easily one of the greatest theater experiences of the year. My only gripe with it is that it does feel very incomplete, but I have no doubt that he'll deliver on our expectations for Dune Part 2.
I am risking my life for you.
You are risking my life so you can fight your enemy and save your pride.
Coming in at number 2 is The Last Duel. That's another video that I'll link, but I love this film. It was without a doubt my most impactful theater experience of the year. I think it's just very important, and it proves that Ridley Scott's still got it at 83 years old. I don't know about that other one though. And finally, at number 1, this is so boring, guys. Everyone knows it's a Licorice Pizza. I'll link my video for that too, but this was arguably my most anticipated release of 2021, and the first time I was gonna get to see one of my favorite director's films, Paul Thomas Anderson, in theaters, and it delivered on all the things I love about him. Complex characters, an extremely dysfunctional relationship, and just solid vibes. I fully acknowledge that this film has also been very controversial. John Michael Higgins' character, who is depicted as very ignorant and derogatory towards the Japanese women he's with, is something that didn't need to be in this film, and even though PTA's intention was to make fun of the character and ignorance in the 70s, it was something that was more blatant than was necessary, and it was unsettling for some people, and that's disappointing. So I don't want to ignore that. I'll link some stuff below of people talking about it much more eloquently than I could. But this film fits perfectly into PTA's MO of exploring really complicated connections between people that here is almost completely platonic and comes about from these characters' specific mindsets in the environment that they're in. That all results in the epic highs and lows of the 70s and the San Fernando Valley, and my favorite film of the year.
I don't need you to tell me whether I'm cool or not.
You're not cool, and your breath smells.
Those were my favorite films of 2021, guys. We got so many excellent films this year, so I tried to do a mix of the ones that I just thought were great overall and the ones that resonated with me because they took a lot of risks, even if they weren't perfect. I hope you're all happy and healthy so far in 2022. Don't forget to tell me your favorite films of last year and to like and subscribe, connect with me on Twitter, Letterboxd, and keep an eye out for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.
But the film is a